Good afternoon, and welcome to our hearing today. Today's hearing will focus on the budget for the Department of Housing and Community Development and California Housing Finance Agency. We have two panels today joining us. The first will provide an overview of HCD's budget. This panel will examine how the investment in housing in the past years has shifted from bond funding to new programs such as dollars from cap and trade for affordable housing and repurposed funding for Proposition 41 that addresses veterans' homelessness issue. We know that California has a number of housing challenges, including housing shortage and rising high costs. What I want to focus on today is what our return on investment is for all the programs that we have before us. How many units have we built with these funds, and how much did they cost? The goal is to understand if we put additional one-time funding into housing, what the most cost-effective use of our dollars will be. With that in mind, the second panel will discuss the LAO's recent report on perspectives on helping low-income Californians afford housing. We will hear from both the LAO and the California Housing Partnership Corporation on their different perspectives on affordable housing. The goal for the second panel is to provide recommendations for building affordable housing projects in California with one-time funding. One housekeeping item is that we are going to need to adjourn at 3:20 p.m. Because of floor session. So with that, I'd like to invite our first panel up, which includes Ben Metcalf and Lisa Bates from the Department of Housing and Community Development, and Tia Boatman-Patterson from California Housing Finance Agency. Thank you so much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Ben Metcalf, and this is my second week as director of the Department of Housing and Community Development. They haven't scared me off yet, which is good. But I will be frank, there's still quite a bit that I haven't yet learned about the nature of this work. And I suspect I may not have all the answers to all the questions you might answer me. But that's why I have Lisa Bates from our team here with me as well. Now, we're going to tag team a little bit, talking about HCD, and then we'll turn to talk to Cal HFA, the sister agency. Let me just start very quickly with a tiny little bit of background on me and my perspective that I bring to the questions that you raised that frame this committee. First of all, I am a California native, although I come here by way of Washington, D.C., where I was working at HUD running their multifamily housing office. Before that, I actually worked here in California for a statewide affordable housing developer. So I know HCD reasonably well, both as a federal partner and as a private partner, and I bring that perspective to bear with me. Now, I'm grateful for the chance to serve as the director at HCD because I do think the state is, in fact, at a little bit of an inflection point, and there's some very interesting things going on in California, both in terms of the leadership role that I think California has taken nationally on important issues like cap and trade and veterans homeless housing, but also a dubious distinction, if you will, of having a leadership role in perhaps areas where we prefer not. And by that, I mean the fact that we as a state are now number one in terms of the homeless population. In Washington, we spent a lot of time celebrating the declining rates of homelessness in much of the country, but California has been bucking that trend. Number one in terms of rent burden, in terms of the number of California families, some 1.7 or 1.8 million now that are paying more than half their income in rent. Number one as well in terms of poverty rates here in this country after housing is factored in. So those are the challenges, I think, that face us as a state that certainly make this work, I think, very worthwhile when we can come up with solutions that help make a dent in that problem or bend the trajectory that we're headed in. In terms of HCD's role, historically, California's situation, believe it or not, will be much, much worse, but for the investments, the legislations, and the voters directed through the department. We funded over almost $5 billion combined through Propositions 1C and 46. And I think it's fair to say that HCD, in partnership with other state agencies, really does have a proven track record through those programs, the wide variety of programs that we funded under those propositions, in meeting and addressing the state's diverse urban and rural housing and community development needs. I'd like to focus on a few of the programs I think that historically have been part of HCD's toolkit, and then I'll talk about some of the things that we're pursuing at the same time. Clearly, our flagship program at HCD has been the multifamily housing program, or MHP as it's known. Over the years, MHP has helped house 27,000 families. These are some of California's most vulnerable families. That MHP program, in fact, two-thirds of the unit, more than two-thirds of those units that we've created are today occupied by extremely low-income families, families that are at 30% or less of the local area median income. And that's actually done not by funding the whole cost of the housing, but by providing directed investments, GAP money, so generally low-interest deferred payment loans, that help significantly leverage unutilized or underutilized federal resources and bring in private investment through private tax credit equity or private finance debt mechanisms. It's a program that at this point I think it's safe to say is very well understood within the development community here in California. It has also served the gamut of needs. In the last round that we did actually in 2014-15, there was a special purpose appropriation of $100 million. We shifted to have a 20% rural component in there, so serving both urban and rural. It also has a companion program, the MHP Supportive Housing Program, which serves formerly homeless and other high-need vulnerable populations. So these are, the mainstream MHP serves extremely low-income populations. This really serves the next level down. So these are folks making less than $15,000 a year. These are folks often coming off the streets or with mental illness or other issues, homelessness, and utilizing what I can safely say from my perspective from working in D.C. as a very much evidence-based housing-first model, a model that's really worked in other parts around the country to actually push that homeless rate down to zero in cities like New Orleans or Salt Lake City. Very highly subscribed as well. And now MHP is just one program. There are other what I would call core investments that have really been incredibly effective in years past. The Joe Cerna Farm Worker Housing Program has built on that MHP framework, providing both rental and homeownership opportunities to agricultural workers and their families. The Cal Home Self-Help Housing Program, which has been very popular in rural areas, has allowed families to build their own homes. 21,000 home buyers have received financial assistance through the self-help model. But today, those toolkits are not funded. And where we have funds available are with our newer programs, the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities Program under Cap and Trade and the VHHP program. I think that these two programs actually are notable in part because they exemplify, I think, how we can work best in terms of tackling very complicated, seemingly intractable issues and doing it in a collaborative way. On the cap and trade work, our work there has been informed by the Infill Infrastructure Grant Program and the TOD program. And we work closely with the Strategic Growth Council, the ARB, and a whole host of other programs within the state and within the private sector to implement the program. And while it delivers on affordable housing objectives, it's also facilitating greenhouse gas reduction targets via transportation and land use changes. The Veterans Housing and Homelessness Prevention Program, funded under Prop 41, which redirected underutilized veterans homeowner funds, has also built off of the lessons of Prop 46 and 1C. And I think there, the work we've done, I was just in an advisory meeting with the VA and other partners yesterday of really bringing a circle of folks together to think creatively about how we solve shared problems is really something to celebrate. It also has done a very good job of leveraging and bringing in federal resources like scarce rental assistance, vouchers through HUD-VASH and other programs. In addition to those kind of two new flagship programs, let me mention 4 ways that HCD has been using kind of existing resources to be more effective with what we already have and to better serve the state's housing needs. And then I'll offer up a small handful of lessons learned that I think might be helpful to the questions we're struggling with today. In terms of being more effective and efficient, I sometimes joke that this is a little bit like digging under the sofa cushions to find all the nickels that are under there. But I think every little bit sometimes does count and puts us on a better trajectory. So first of all, I think the team at HCD, and I can say this from seeing it on the other side, has been very aggressive about pursuing federal funds, even though there are not a lot of federal funds out there today. Federal funds have substantially dropped. But where there are new resources, outside of home and CDBG. So for example, in the Emergency Solutions Grant Program with the Natural Disaster Resiliency Competition, which we won, our 811 Rental Assistance Demonstration Program, we're able to get very competitive, small amounts of money because we're able to demonstrate a very effective ability to collaborate, to work with other partners, whether it's on fire prevention under NRDC or transitioning homeless individuals out of mental health institutions under 811. And we're able to show that we're really going to be using data to measure our progress, that we're going to be able to deliver on outcomes, and that we're going to be able to leverage. So not large awards, but I think they actually change systems. I think they actually change the way we work and the way we think. They help motivate local communities as well. And so second, I would say, is the work HCD does working with local governments, which is very important. Local governments today control a lot of the issues that surround the development of affordable housing and putting new supply onto the marketplace. Through the housing element review that HCD does, through regional housing needs assessment that HCD performs, it's safe to say we have good visibility into the areas within the state that most need new supply and most need affordable housing. And I think we can at least work with or try to work with localities to help them problem solve some of the barriers they face in getting the supply built. Third, within HCD, I'm pleased to say that the team has been doing very good work, I think, working to realign our Division of Financial Assistance to make sure that any monies that are out there and any accounts are being effectively and efficiently used. I think we've also learned a lot from the last couple of years. Tia and the Treasurer's Office can testify to this on the issue of high costs within the affordable housing stock. I think we have a lot more visibility into that issue. We understand that often the costs may be warranted, in fact, but there are a number of different ways in which collectively we can move the needle a little bit to be more efficient in terms of what we fund. To sum up, I think, let me offer a few lessons learned as I look back over the last 10 years or so of HCD's experience about what has worked well in delivering housing programs. So first, clearly, offering flexibility to the folks on the other end who are putting in the grants, submitting the competitions, understanding that innovation often does happen at the local level and working to support that is critical. The flip side of that coin is making sure that we're clear about the outcomes that we're trying to achieve and making sure that everybody is driving towards achieving those same outcomes. So there may be different ways of solving a problem in a rural area versus an urban area, but we still want to get to the same end goals. Second, I think data is a big part of what we've discovered. We need to track those investments. We need to measure our progress. We need to be able to talk about what it is that we're actually doing in terms of changing the outcomes for the families living in the housing. I think we're much stronger in that area than we were before. Third, using our targeted state investments to leverage federal funds, for example, through the 4% low-income housing tax credit program, which is a significantly underutilized federal resource. And then lastly, I would say in the lessons learned bucket, something to do with really predictability and responsiveness that we do best when we're very transparent about the programs we're setting up, when we create some continuity of investments over time, when we build off of the infrastructure that we have in place. I think we did this very well in the special appropriation of MHP funds in 2014-15, where we minimized startup time and were able to align with the Treasurer's Office to make sure the timing was right. So to wrap up, I would suggest there's no silver bullet here, but I would say that we do know that HCD clearly can't go it alone. And I would say to all of you, personally that I'm certainly here in my role as director to make sure that this department is partnering as well as we can with the other agencies in the state, with this committee and with the legislature. And please know that I'm excited to make headway however we can in the years to come. I think as somebody who's been in this business for a while and spent some time trying to get housing built and trying to fund federal programs, it's clearly not just about the four walls and the roof. It really is about making sure that when we move somebody into an affordable housing unit, understanding that they're not having to make sacrifices for food, for education, for health care, that we're giving their kids a real and meaningful shot to move up into the middle class, that we're helping folks who want to revitalize and turn around neighborhoods, that we're helping folks move into home ownership. So there's good work that we can do in the years ahead. I look forward to working with this committee to make that happen and look forward to answering all of your questions or passing them off to my much more knowledgeable assistants on either side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben, and welcome to you. You've inherited a department here and a very complex challenge confronting the entire state, particularly acute in high-cost areas. So I think what we want to do is hear all of the presentations, and then we'll circle back and have a little bit of a dialogue if we could.
Well, thank you, Assemblyman Muller and members of the committee. My name is Tia Boatman-Patterson. I'm the Executive Director with the California Housing Finance Agency, having been appointed in August of 2014 and confirmed Senate confirmation April of 2015. And I am very pleased to have Ben on board and very excited to be working with him as we face this crisis. So thank you for the opportunity to present here today. I'd like to give you an overview of the California Housing Finance Agency. We were created in 1975 to serve as the state's affordable housing bank. At a time in history much like today when resources for affordable housing were being reduced or eliminated. Recognizing that virtually no affordable housing was being created without some form of a federal subsidy, alternative mechanisms that would have a lesser impact on the need for federal subsidies were developed. CalHFA was created to develop public-private partnerships between state government and private capital investors to create additional and new affordable housing opportunities. Since its creation, CalHFA has operated programs that support the creation of affordable multifamily and single-family housing by providing down payment assistance to first-time home buyers, special programs in concert with cities and counties, partnerships with other state departments to create housing for the mentally ill, and other programs. During the past 30 to 40 years, HCD and CalHFA have undertaken its affordable housing mandate in different but very complementary ways. So I'd like to take a moment to clarify how CalHFA differs from HCD. There was a reorganization plan in 2012 that transferred CalHFA and HCD to the newly established Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. HCD reports directly to Business Consumer Services Housing Agency, and CalHFA is displayed as a program within HCD's budget. This restructuring was intended to improve the housing program policy development and enable a higher level of programmatic coordination and collaboration between CalHFA and HCD. We undertook a joint assessment, and it was determined that the two departments would not merge or consolidate, but that we would establish a formal collaborative relationship. And I have to say that that has actually worked well, because we have actually been able to exchange data, collaborate on policies and programs, and not only between one another, but also with the Tax Credit Allocation Committee and the California Debt Limit Allocation Committee, which are some of our other housing entities over in the State Treasurer's Office. The programmatic and administrative differences between HCD and CalHFA stem primarily from CalHFA's statutory position as a self-sufficient lending institution, the state's affordable housing bank. CalHFA is designed to be self-sufficient, and its credit rating is independent of the state of California. The state is not liable for the agency's $2.5 billion in housing bond debt, and CalHFA has historically raised its capital through the sale of private activity bonds and thereafter loans the money at below market interest rates to finance housing for Californians of low and moderate income. CalHFA earns its income on lending programs from the spread between the rate of interest paid to bondholders and the interest charged on the loans. It uses its income to fund additional housing programs, repay bondholders, and fund administrative costs. And I wanted to lay that out for you so that you understood the difference, because we don't traditionally receive a general fund appropriation or go through the legislative budget process. I'd like to share with you some information and analysis on the state-funded programs in which CalHFA has been operated or administered. So there are a few occasions where you have given us a general fund appropriation. In 2008, via an MOU with the Department of Healthcare Services, and I always get that mixed up because they've recently changed their name as well, through Proposition 163, which was the Mental Health Services Act, we were given a one-time allocation of $400 million to create the Mental Health Service Act housing program. That program offered permanent financing and capitalized operating subsidies for the development, acquisition, construction, and or rehabilitation of permanent supportive housing to serve persons with serious mental illness who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. That program is set to expire in May of 2016, when that original allocation of funds has been exhausted and the MOU is set to expire. Those funds have actually financed 2,500 units of restricted units or created 2,500 units restricted to those with mental illness. Those funds also were paired with some of HCD's money to create and develop over 10,000 units of affordable housing. CalHFA is currently working with various counties on a voluntary program to replace the MHSA program so that we continue to serve this population. In our single-family division, through Proposition 46, Proposition 1C, and an allocation made under SB 50, provided program opportunities such as our Lending Down Payment Assistance Program, a school facilities fee program, a teachers program to revitalize areas and programs in residential development. The California Home Buyers Down Payment Assistance Program, which CHDAP for short, has assisted more than 56,000 families purchasing their first home. CHDAP's allocation was $379 million and leveraged nearly $11 billion in private financing. With the total allocation of $508 million, these programs together funded loans helping more than 69,000 families. We have a chart of some of these breakdowns as well that I'll have my legislative person make sure that she provides to the committee. In 1975, CalHFA, developed and funded by the state with only $20 million, we have now grown to a $4.3 billion organization. As the state's affordable housing bank, we provide many programs and opportunities other than those funded with state dollars. So I'd like to offer a little more information on production results that CalHFA has seen by utilizing tax credits, issuing bonds, and taking advantage of public-private partnerships. CalHFA's multifamily lending has financed nearly 30,000 affordable housing units since 1978. We are primarily a first lien lender using tax-exempt bonds to finance the mortgages. Multiple funding sources are necessary to develop affordable housing. CalHFA's loans are typically used in conjunction with federal tax credits and often local subordinate loans. Additional state subsidy is not common in all of CalHFA multifamily loans. The tax credit financing structure results in projects with units restricted at 60% of the area median income or below. And so when Mr. Metcalf was talking about how predominantly they are serving an income level at extremely low income and below, I would say our targets are 50 to 60% AMI, and so that's how we work complementary to one another. They're targeting their funds more deeply targeted at more deeply affordability in some of our most vulnerable populations. Projections for multifamily this fiscal year are $190 million in first mortgage lending and $300 million in conduit bond issuance. The production will create or preserve around 2,500 affordable housing units. Aside from the state-funded programs, CalHFA's single-family lending has financed $340 million in down payment assistance loans and $20 billion in first mortgages since its launch, helping more than 190,000 California families purchase their first homes. Of these borrowers, 50% are Hispanic, 36% are Caucasian, 9% African American, 4% Asian, and 1% other. I'm kind of very proud of these numbers because our numbers to our home buyers look very much like the state of California. Projections for single family this fiscal year using our fee-based TBA model, and we are purchasing conforming loans from a preferred lender and then reselling those loans on the secondary market. So we're not issuing bonds at this time, but we're using that as our financing structure. We're estimated to produce 3,400 first mortgages with $900 million and $40 million in down payment assistance. While Cal HFA has seen a successful recovery in multifamily and single-family mortgage lending since the recent housing crisis, we have also recognized many changes in the marketplace that we will need to address in our business structure. To that end, we will be analyzing our statutes to identify ways to create more flexibility and remain competitive in the marketplace, allowing us to assist hundreds and thousands more low and moderate income Californians. We thank you for your time and your leadership in this area.
Thank you so much for the presentations. At this point, I'd like to open it up for some questions from the committee members.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. Buttons push. There we go. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you both for the presentations. And I know that there's a robust effort underway in both the department and Cal HFA to do what we can with providing affordable housing in the state of California. So I come from San Mateo County, and this is a continual frustration. We have a crisis happening with regard to affordability. There are supply and demand issues. We have a robust innovation economy that's creating lots of high-paying jobs and low-wage jobs at the same time, but there's a real middle-class crunch happening. Workforce housing is a real challenge for us. So I come off of city council before I found my way to Sacramento, and we used inclusionary ordinances. We used redevelopment funds effectively to generate and incentivize the building of below market rate housing and market rate housing. But since that time, we've lost redevelopment at the local level. It's a tool that many communities used, as you know, to build affordable housing. We are largely, we've exhausted our bond funds. The governor vetoed an important tax credit bill with no votes in the legislature. And the governor did use, when he was the mayor of Oakland, redevelopment rather effectively to build housing. And I know the mayor of Oakland now is aggressively trying to deal with this issue, as are most policymakers in the Bay Area, since at all levels we hear about it every day. So that comment aside, just with regard to my desire to see something more and something to the scale of the problem, let me frame it this way. If we weren't bound by politics and budget constraints like we are, which is sort of silly to talk about because we are bound by politics and budget constraints, what would a policy look like that actually addressed the crisis that we have on our hands? The governor in his budget presentation talked about how expensive each affordable housing unit would be. Therefore, I guess the suggestion was we can never afford to deal with the crisis to the scale that it needs to be dealt with. So we probably ought not deal with it other than the money we have in cap and trade and sustainable communities. And it's not as though we're not doing anything, but we're not acting in a way that's sort of recognizing, I guess, the scale of the problem. So do either of you have suggestions on, what an ideal setup would be? What would be ideal to deal with the magnitude of the problem? And it's not, one thing. We're talking about a series of levers that would have to be pulled. But do you have any thoughts just about, how our policy response matches up with the challenge that is confronting the state, and how we are dealing with it or not dealing with it?